that. So, all right, so we're gonna go. We're gonna jump right into this because so basically this was originally designed as an all-day course. We're dividing up as much as we can, which I think is great. I think there's only so much time you can spend on a Zoom. But I do want to jump into it and really just kind of have a conversation. I might share the PowerPoint. I'm going to have it up. I don't know that there's going to be a lot of completely relevant slides that you can't just, from having the information in front of you, but we'll just kind of see how that goes and keep the conversation going. If you do have questions at any point in time, chime in, interrupt me. You can put it in the chat box. I will do my best to keep an eye on that. But I just want to get into the mentality of it. So page 8 in the workbook, and I'm just going to read this to you. It says, imagine yourself a year from now. You walk into your office Monday morning and see the stack of leads that you'll call. You call each one, connecting with them effortlessly, saying the right things, and exploring how you can help. You're confident that you'll set appointments with many of them. After your calls, you have 5 appointments booked and a solid follow-up plan for the rest. In fact, you've already done your homework for each seller and know what pricing you'll recommend. All of your appointments go well, and you sign all except for one. You didn't feel it would be a great match, so you refer them to another agent. 4 new clients in a week is a big win that boosts your motivation. Your motivation is even higher as you attend 2 closings that afternoon. That feeling of motivation and success propels you every day. So when you hear that, what do you think? What went through your mind as I read that to you? I'm a very needy instructor, by the way. Like I need some feedback. So, so much so that I'll awkwardly wait for the answers.
I wish that was me.
So tell me what, okay, you said you wish that were you. What part about it? Anything in particular?
Being able to do a pre-listing package to have it in the seller's hands within an hour.
Okay.
Never done it.
Awesome. I like that. I like how specific you are on that. Who else? Anybody else?
I thought signing all of them but one would be ideal.
Yeah, signing all of them but one. If any of you hear that when you thought to yourself, because basically what that story alludes to is the agent said, I didn't take that one because it wasn't a fit. The thought of not taking the listing. Is that, what is your reaction when you hear that?
That it must be nice.
Must be nice. Yeah, it's good leverage to have, right? My first team leader, his name was Sean Rawls. He always taught me, he said, if you're focused on making sure you close one particular person, it's because you don't have enough leads, right? And that's the biggest leverage you'll ever have in the business is a full pipeline. All right. So why are you here? Right, page 8 talks about the discussion of why'd you commit to the next 3 weeks on Monday afternoon to a class called Win with Sellers. What do you want to get out of today? Share with me some of the things that you want to get out of being in this class.
More listings.
Okay, that's a good one. More listings.
I like
What
to
else?
have confidence to have the choice of 4 and saying goodbye to another that wasn't a fit. I mean, just hearing that story was it was exciting, but in a way intimidating. So I want to get that intimidating part out of the way.
Okay. So you have that confidence in your choices, get the intimidating part out of the way. All right, what else?
Just to get my first listing, if anything. Just
Okay.
one listing at least, yeah.
What else? So for those of you here, we'll kind of go through the questions that are on there. For those of you that have worked with sellers, or from what you know, what do you enjoy most about that? What's the most appealing part about working with sellers? Quiet again.
I think often you have the opportunity to get both sides. You have an opportunity to stay with them and have a buyer side also.
Okay. Yep. That's a good one.
The best part I like about it
What's that?
is the time factor. The lack of the lack of time needed to keep a listing and make money on it. So, dollar per hour goes up significantly on a listing.
Yep.
As far as the, you got 4, you don't want to take the 1. It's the beautiful thing. You don't tie the outcome to how many you have. You just let it go. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't
Yep.
happen. And you have the opportunity to say yes or no. I don't want that client. It's going to be a PIA.
Yep. Yep. I love what, the big thing for me and what Greg said is the time. I always tell this story. Lynn isn't a super huge fan of this story, but years ago, this was when we were in the Mount Pleasant office, we were all down at Dragon Boats, and Lynn wasn't there because she was showing property. She had an out of town buyer, and I was sitting there hanging out with Anton, and he stepped up and left to take a call and came back, and he said, "Hey, Lynn just submitted an offer on one of my listings that she showed today. It looks like we're going to get it under contract." And we had that conversation of the end result for both of them was the same. Yet that day he was at Dragon Boats hanging out, same result, same paycheck, everything. And she was showing property all day. Now, obviously that's what you choose to do as a buyer's agent, right? But it's definitely a high best use of your time. Absolutely. So what are some challenges of working with sellers if you've ever had any?
The listing price?
Pricing, that's a good one. Challenges of pricing. And that's still a challenge now, by the way. It's definitely not where all the stats on paper are pointing towards a kind of the wild west for sellers. You can miss it on pricing, and not by much, and it'll hurt. You'll have a listing that sits. We've got one right now. We've got a difficult conversation to have with the seller later today, because it's a very desirable house. It's a great location, and we missed it on price. And they knew they were pushing it, and probably shouldn't allow them, but communication's big. What else?
I think they're passionate about their house. They, maybe think highly of it and have a hard time hearing that things they need to
Right.
fix.
Yep. Can be very emotional for sure. What else? Anything else that you've had from challenges on there? You've hit the 2 big ones, right? Price and condition, getting the price correctly, and then having the condition of their house be really reality from what they think from there. So for your business goal for the rest of 2020, and we're actually probably going to do this, is kind of do a revamp of goals here in the next couple of weeks. What is your goal for listings taken between now and the end of the year? Do you have it? You don't have to share it out loud. Give me a thumbs up if you know what it is. Okay. So 2 people, that's good. Now give me a thumbs up if you haven't yet set your goal. All right, good. Hey, the good news is that was a test. Everyone participated because you had to thumbs up one of those, right? So if you don't know your goal for the rest of the year, that should probably be your one thing. Like what needs to happen between now and the end of the year from a listing standpoint that's going to have you reach your goal. And again, make it attainable, but also know that you set it as a little bit of a stretch goal, particularly with what's going on now. Because not only with what Sarah, going back to what Sarah said, not only are you looking at the possibility of listing and then getting them as a buyer, you're also looking at the opportunity to leverage that listing to get buyer leads, right? And that's still something that can be done through your open houses, through your marketing, whatever it may be. So it's definitely an important thing to keep in consideration. So, all right, I'm going to throw the slides up here just so you guys have something else to look at other than me. And I want to jump into this on page 9, and I'm going to kind of skip down because I want to keep you guys on schedule. But I like this list of 9 things that top listing agents commonly excel in these areas. Number 1, they prioritize and manage their leads. That's a big one, because a lot of times we put all of our leads into the same pipeline or to the same group, and we don't really prioritize which ones we need to be following up on that. So you need to be careful. They know their sellers. They know their sellers' main thing, their motivation. And we're going to talk about how you get to that. We're going to talk about all these topics throughout the course, but today we're really going to talk about how they get us to know that. Number 3, they're decision facilitators. I like that. What does that mean? What is a decision facilitator?
You're walking your client to the decision that needs to be made. You're showing them, guiding them there.
Yep. You know, that's a big one, and it's hard because oftentimes you will get, you know, the big question that we're always worried about getting is like, well, what would you do, right? You're not there to make that decision for them. You're there to facilitate them, and that's a script that can be used. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, my job is to give you as much information on what you can expect from the market, and then we use that information to make the best decision for your family, right? And everything will affect everything. So we're gonna use the information I share to help you make a decision on the price, which is gonna affect the timing. We're gonna use this information to kind of set the timing so we then know how to dictate the price, but you're facilitating that decision. They master their scripts. Being a listing agent at a high level, you have to know your scripts. You have to know your scripts. They hire a coach for accountability. They know their numbers. They use time efficiently and effectively. They leverage technology, which everyone loves to do. And they are familiar with, they embrace the 6 perspectives, which we'll go kind of into, but really the 6 perspectives of kind of your mindset and how you're building your listing business. So the reason that I'm loving that we're doing this class is because, as it says, as we just kind of go through it, if you look at page 10 and then what the slide is success begins with proven models. And what often we see, if you take a look at this, this graph on page 10 of the book, it's also on page 37 of the MREA, if you are taking notes in your MREA as well. It's this whole concept of building your business on foundational models versus implementing your creativity right away. And we see this all of the time. And I don't want to pick on newer agents, because it's not always newer agents. It may also be agents that are newer to the company. We got into the business because of our entrepreneurial mindset. We got into the business because of our creativity. We have these great ideas on how we want to market listings. We'll just talk about listings. And we're great at video, or we're great at making flyers, or whatever it may be. We're creative in our write-ups. And all of those things are great creativity to add. Just make sure you're not basing your business on it. Right? And because what happens is exactly what this model is showing here is when you build it on models and you add the creativity, you can continue to grow it. If you build it on your creativity, basically what you're going to have is you'll get to a certain level. And this is what they call the moving from E to P in the 6 perspectives. You'll hit a ceiling of achievement that the only way to bust through to the next level will be to implement proven systems and models. So you've kind of done it backwards. So the goal of this is to help establish those. What we're going to cover throughout this course over the next few weeks is today we're going to go through the first 3. We're going to do the lead. This is the seller service cycle, the lead generation, the pre-listing, the listing consultation. Then you're going to service and marketing and negotiations, and then contract to close and post-close systems. The best instructor that I've ever seen teach this class is Mark Ramsey. He's now a Bold coach. Some of you may have been in his Bold. He's out of Charlotte, North Carolina. He and his wife have a great team up there. He is a great guy, and he explains this seller service cycle. I think it's a really cool way that he does it. Is you've got to look at these 7 things here as your roadmap. Right? And you may adjust that a little bit. Your lead generation is going to look a little bit different than mine and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, you have this 7-step seller service model. And you need to look at this model as your path that you should not deviate, right? You should not deviate from this path. And if you do, that will be a defining moment where at some point later, you're going to point back and say, this problem is because I deviated from the path there. So, and I know that sounds like the simplest way to look at it, but for whatever reason, when Mark explained this to me, it just always stuck with me. This is your path. You've created it. This is your high level of service, your high level of standards. You keep it there. Now, you may have some strategic flexibility, but this should be your standard. And this is a standard whether or not you're listing a FSBO that you've been working on for 3 months or your best friend that you have wine with every night. Right? You use the same service cycle for everyone. And by the way, this will also make it a lot easier to do this at a higher level as an individual agent because you have everything systematized, right? And you're not going to have to worry about, well, I need help this or I need help that. You may at some point, but it'll probably happen a little bit later. Just don't jump from what works. The truth at the bottom of page 11 says the service cycle represents knowing the basics, systematizing your business, getting better over time, and working towards mastery. So mindset and action. So the page 12 kind of goes into the details of each one of these. You understand which part of them, and we're going to dive deeper in those. What I want you to do is on page 13, and then obviously if you haven't printed it, you can just jot these down. I want you to put a checkbox next to, or mark off how many of the items, of those 13 items, do you actually currently do. So take about 2 minutes and go through and just mark off how many of those you currently do on page 13 of the workbook. So how many did you, well, here, I'll give you about a couple more seconds. See, some of you are still working. All right, so how many did you get? You can either tell me or type it in the chat box.
I got 7.
7, okay. Who else?
6.
6. All right. Anybody got any significant difference?
I have 5.
Okay. You get 5, 6, 7. I think that's from everyone. I think I've heard from everyone on here. So let me ask you this. Out of all the ones that are on there, which one that you, after reading through them, which is one that you want to take the most immediate action on? I want to hear from everyone on this one. I'm not saying whether or not you're right or wrong, just which is the one you want to take immediate action on?
I need to set a goal for the number.
Okay. Okay. So number 9, I love that. Okay. Who else?
Number 2.
Number 2, have a
Oh.
database of METs and past clients. Consistently communicate with them.
Oh, you
That
know,
word.
I'm in my old book. Hold on.
Oh, what was number 2? What was it for you?
That would be actually, it's the same thing, follow up. So
Okay.
that consistently communicate would include follow up. So it's the same thing for me.
Okay. Awesome. Who else?
I would say number 5. I mean, I've been in the business and I was a buyer's agent at first. So taking on listings is exciting to me. So
Okay.
pushing a goal and
Okay.
closing more listings.
All right. I love it. I love it. I love it. How about, I think I heard Allison, did you share, Allison and Casey?
No, let's see. I'm re-looking at it. Probably number 9 and also number 1. I need to get better at number 1, time blocking.
Okay. All right. Casey, how about you?
I would say number 1 is my most important one, being, a newer agent. I'm still
Okay.
fine tune what my schedule is, so that's definitely mine.
Okay. And Greg, how about you?
I don't have a workbook.
No. Well, we'll have to make sure you get one. I did post a link to the PDF in the chat box if you want to download it there.
Okay.
All right, so page 14. Quickly jot down, think about your listing appointments that you've gone on. What did you do in the process that enabled the success? So think about if you took a listing on that appointment that you went on, what did you do in the process that enabled the success of that? And then on any of those that have failed, what did you do in the process to enable that failure? And then do you have any limiting beliefs keeping you from the goal of changing your actions? Now, it's not the goal of getting listings, of changing your actions. Okay, so on the ones that you've gotten, what did you do well? The ones that you did not get, what did you do in the process that caused that to happen? And then what are your limiting beliefs on changing your behavior? So let's just take about 2 minutes to go through those.
You want us to verbally say them now?
No, you can just go through and jot them down right now. We'll come back to it. All right, so let's go through them. What did you do that you did well that caused the success of it?
So mine was that I actually was prepared and used the tools that really prepared a listing packet.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. What else?
Confidence and acknowledgeable of what we're talking about, what I was talking about.
Okay. Okay. That's a big one, by the way. Confidence and knowledge is a big one. What else? Anybody else have one for those?
Being tenacious. I find that when my mind is focused and tenacious, I take more. Goes back to mindset.
Yep.
On the loss side, is that the other question? The backside?
Yeah, we can go into that one. Yeah.
Probably not as prepared as I should have been, whether it was pricing or understanding their needs.
Okay. That's fair. That is fair. I like that. So what about who else on the what'd you do wrong one?
Actually, for me, I am.
You're good.
One of my biggest, and I will never forget it, is not following up. Literally.
Okay. Yeah.
It still stings.
It does sting, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Mine was not doing a good enough job in my needs analysis of understanding the information they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So I came very knowledgeable and I knew the stats, and I took for granted the level of detail that they wanted me to go. And I had the info, I just didn't do it. And it came down to with the feedback when he chose the other agent was like, hey, it was really hard. And what it ended up coming down to is the other agent really knew his stats and he had all the printouts of where it came from. And just having that, he said, I know it sounds silly, but just having that material and seeing where he got it from, that was really the only thing that deciphered it. I had that material in my briefcase, right? So had I done another better job of understanding their personality, that one stings too. So what are some limiting beliefs that you have from the goal of changing your action, that keep you from the goal of changing your actions? Do you have it? Some of you may not.
Fear of annoying people by following up and trying to get their business too much.
Okay. Fear of being annoying and pestering people. That's fair. That's fair. It's fair that is a fear. It's not a valid one. However, I'm glad that you admitted it, right? Because a lot of people have that one, right? Okay. What else? So how do we change that? Because let's assume that Casey's not alone in this one. How do you change that fear that you're being annoying and pestering? How do you redirect that into an unlimiting belief?
For me, I just had to do it.
Right.
Just had to push through and say, if I don't ask, it'll never be asked. And, just continue to close.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing on that is one of the few scripts that I truly know is pain versus pleasure. And so you have to flip it and say, you think you're being annoying, but if you don't reach out to them, you're not taking care of them. And if you don't reach out to them and not take care of them, then you're going to be in pain because you're not going to get that business.
Yep.
Flip it that way.
Yep.
That's-
And look at it from the, you know, I think one of the things that John Drea said was that you know, when she went out there, what she did really, really well was knowledgeable and confidence. Is look at it from the standpoint is if you're not reaching out to these people with the belief that you're the most knowledgeable for them and the best one to do this, then there's a risk of them enlisting with someone else. Like, have that much confidence in your service that you provide. It's not necessarily saying you're the only one out there for everyone. You could be, right? But it's just saying there's too much of a risk in it right now for the sellers to go through an experience that could have been prevented had they decided to work with me. So, all right, good. So let's jump ahead. I'm going to jump ahead page 18. We're going to get into the lead conversion side of it. Now, page 18 talks about conversion rates, and it walks us through a little exercise. And here's what I know. Unless any of you can correct me, it's my experience that most people that are in here today do not know their conversion rates. And the reason is because you don't track your numbers. This is not a judgment statement. It's a get to the point statement, right? You're not alone. I'm not saying it's right. However, if you don't know your numbers, then it's really hard to kind of go through this calculation that's on there. So they talk about the numbers of how many contacts do you make per week is the question you have. How many of those meet your definition of a lead? How many of those leads become appointments? And then how many of those appointments become listing contracts? Okay, so those are what you want to track over time. Here's what I want to bring up today is in bold and for the purpose of contacts and lead generation, I always say if you don't know, use the default of the 50-to-1. Right? If you've been through bold, they talk about the efficiency ratio. Okay, and the efficiency ratio is done in week 6, and basically what we do is we tally up the number of contacts we've made up until that point, the number of appointments we've gone on to that point, and you come up with a highly efficient, a mediumly efficient, and a low efficient conversion rate, right? And the mediumly efficient is about 50-to-1, meaning you had to have 50 conversations to go on one appointment. Okay, now take a deep breath. Some of you look like you're about to pass out. It's like, holy crap, 50-to-1, like that's a lot. It's not good or bad. It just is what it is, right? And there will be days where you're going to be higher and there are days that you're going to be lower. What are some of the things that will change those conversion rates?
The environment, as in what we're going through today.
Yes, exactly, right? I don't know that many of us will probably get higher to 50-to-1 with what we're going through now because of the environment that we're going on, right? That's something that's really out of your control, right? What are some things that would change it that are in your control?
How many people you contact.
Yep. The people that you're contacting, right? There's 2 big things that are in your control. Number 1 is the people you're contacting, and number 2 is what you're saying. Right? Who you're calling and what you're saying. And a lot of people will argue that really the number 1 that you have the most control on is what you're saying. Because you can call enough of the people who aren't buyers or sellers, and as long as you have a good script, you'll get a lead out of it, right? But those are things that are going to do. It's who you're calling and what you're saying. If you're prospecting for sale by owners all day long, and Greg and I are out door knocking all day long, you're going to have a higher conversion rate than we are because you're going after seller leads. We're going after a community of people, right? So it'll vary from time to time. So we'll just say from the 50-to-1. Now we won't get too detailed because we're not doing the economic model, but it's the next thing you want to do is once you get that appointment, what's your conversion rate to appointments gone on to listings taken, and then listings taken to listings closed. Nationwide, both of those are 75%. Going back to Greg's point though, in this environment, your listings taken to listings closed is probably going to be higher than 75% because we have so few listings, right? You're probably not going to only be selling, 7.5 or 3 out of 4 homes that are on the market. Most homes are going to be selling unless you're getting into some exorbitant market. So those are the things we want to do is the conversation to the appointment to getting the business, and then the business to closing. So let's talk about this conversion side of things, and that begins with the lead. So page 20 in the book, which basically looks at, and this is page 192 in the MREA. It's also page 97 in the MREA. It shows up in 2 places. The lead conversion begins with the leads. This comes from the book. It's also in the manual. It says, to succeed in real estate, you must have client leads. It's that simple. Until you have enough leads to meet or exceed your goal, there's no other issue. No matter if you're a doctor, lawyer, or entrepreneur, everyone has 2 jobs: their chosen profession and lead generation. I mean, that's really it. So what you've got to be careful on is that what I love about this point is the simplicity of that you have to be looking for buyer and seller leads. And in this case, it's going to be seller leads. So that's why it's important to know how many contacts you make, but also make sure you're contacting the right people. When I know that, one of the choices that it wasn't really the one that Shenandoah had picked, but it was the one on there, was to have a database of METs as well as a pipeline of leads, right? Well, if I've got a big database of METs locally that I can go tap into, I'm going to be doing a lot of lead generation to people who aren't necessarily a buyer or seller leads yet. So I might then have to explore some other areas that are going to be low-hanging fruit, for lack of a better way to put it, expireds, for sale by owners, specifically going after homes, people in a home for a certain period of time. But the lead conversion begins with the leads. So we want to talk about is the pre-qualify for listing leads. I love this. It's super important. On top of page 21, it says all leads are not equal. The leads most deserving of your face time are those that are pre-qualified as able, ready, and willing to sell within a predictable time frame. There's a class I teach called lead generation says that not all leads are good leads. There's a myth, they say. There's no such thing as a bad lead. Few exceptions. They're just not all equal, right? So if I've got a for sale by owner and they're interested in hearing from me and said, yeah, I would like some more information on the market, I'm going to treat those differently than maybe someone that I met cold calling that said, we're possibly going to be putting our house on the market if we retire in 3 years, right? They're both leads. We just have to start pre-qualifying those leads because it determines our follow-up, right? So if we look at the 3 things, able, willing, and ready. Able, financially able to complete the transaction now, right? Do they have the equity that they're in the home? This is another one. Does that equity get them into a living situation that they can be in? I think that's more of our challenge now that we're seeing in our current market is not so much they don't have enough equity in their home as they don't have anywhere to put that equity if they sell it, right? So are they able to do it? Are they willing? Are they willing to take action now? Again, this goes to what Greg was saying, the current environment. Are they willing to take action now? We had, for mastery, people that are in mastery coaching once a month or every couple of weeks, I don't know how often they do it. Gary Keller does this interview with Monica Reynolds called Confronting Reality. And he was making a point about today's market, and he's not a doom and gloomer, but he's not a Pollyanna, right? And his whole thing was the projections of the second quarter statistics are probably going to be a drop of about 30% in the GDP, which is going to have a ripple effect. He said, but we're not feeling it in the real estate industry because we have such an amazing shortage of listing inventory right now, right? So the real estate industry is feeling strong. He said, however, sellers are not behaving that's the case. They're still taking their time. They're still wondering about the market. They're still allowing the other environment to kind of come in on that. So are they willing to take that step now? And some aren't. Right. So again, it doesn't make them good or bad. It just qualifies them where they are, and then ready and motivated to make strategic decisions now. Right. It's similar to willing. Right. And it is, can they actually pull the trigger? There are a lot of people will be willing to sell, but they've got 2 or 3 weeks worth of work to do, or a month or so of work to do, or a lease, whatever it may be. We just got to figure out where they are. I do love this at the bottom where it says avoiding pitfalls, says not gauging client ability, readiness, and willingness correctly. Also high motivation, like An unchangeable moving date can trump other factors, right? This is a big one. So I mentioned earlier the seller that we have that we've missed the mark on the price. Well, they're relocating to Anchorage. And on July, I can't remember, it's August 1, they will be in Anchorage. Like that's it. I mean, they're there. That's going to trump whether or not they're financially willing to take less, because they don't need to be living literally on the other side of the country to do that. So being able to gauge those also makes the conversation easier when we have this price discussion later. It's like, listen, we've given it the college try at this price. It ain't working. And where I'd love for you to get $10,000 more than you think you should, it's a possibility you won't. However, you also will have your home sold by the time you move. So making sure that you're balancing all those out. So what you can do with those, and just jump to page 22, is you can work those together as how you start to qualify your leads. Now, an A lead, as it says on here, is able, ready, and willing to do business within the next 2 weeks. B lead is two weeks to 2 months, and then C lead is anything after 60 days. I would be less worried about the scientific definition of each one of these, and more worried about making sure you have all your leads in an area and be able to follow up with them. Because if you are in a position now in your business where you're either new or you're refocusing on the seller side of your business, or if you're behind on your goals, right now you just need to worry about getting leads. And don't worry about so much classifying them until you start to get a lead pool that does start to strain your time as far as how much follow-up you can do. I would also say an A, B, C lead would be, an A lead would be able, willing, and ready. A B would be 2 of those, and a C would be 1 of those, right? That's another way you can look at it. It can be timing, it's going to be different for someone. If you've got a top producer like Greg, his timing is going to look differently than someone who's just moving over to the seller side of the business. 2 weeks may be all he has time to work with now, and he has to have a different follow-up system for anybody that's above that. So again, use this as a guideline, but make sure that you don't get so focused on classifying the leads that you're worried more on the how-to versus the actual just doing. Okay. Do's and don'ts of lead generation. Practice highly productive lead generation, meaning I know what leads I have and I know what my follow-up system is. Prospect to generate leads that meet their definition and that's their definition of a lead. Feed, organize, and grow their database daily. Have an effective 36 touch plan. Practice consistently, follow up on leads. They do not rely solely on the internet to feed them leads. I don't think anybody here, I'm not saying that you can get leads from that. But by the way, because right now I know a lot of people in productivity coaching are doing Facebook ads and they're getting great leads from it. If you do that and then don't do everything in the first column over here, then that was a colossal waste of time and money on those leads. Because it's all in the follow-up. I mean, Shenandoah, that was the one that stings. It's all of her follow-up was after she'd gone on the appointment, right? It has to start from the very, very beginning. Change or add methods of lead generation randomly. We see that all the time. Don't do that. Stick with one. Wait for a number of leads they need to hit their goal, and skip follow-up. Don't skip follow-up. Questions so far? I feel like I'm doing a lot of chatting right now, but I want to make sure we stay on schedule. But questions so far about anything? Anything you want to add or ahas? All right. So let's look at this lead generation, lead conversion model. All right, it's a 4-step process, right? So 1 is you capture the lead by getting their information. I'm going to go through them briefly, and then we're going to dig down on each one. Connect with them by establishing the relationship, close them for an appointment, and then cultivate them to maintain the strengthen the relationship. So let's break that down. So I do one thing I want to make sure that, and I try to point this out anytime we talk about lead generation, and this is on the bottom of page 24. There are 3 things. There's actually a 4th one, but the 4th one's kind of assumed. Successful lead generation outcome. Number 1 and number 2 are the obvious ones. You either get an appointment or get a referral. So if you're lead generating, great. If you did one of those 2 things, you got an appointment or got a referral. There are 2 other ones that are also a success in lead generation. They just can't be the only thing you do. The 3rd one is strengthen the relationship. The fourth one that's not on there is similar to that. It's add to your Met group. Right. So just think of it in a general way. And lead generation is not all making phone calls, but let's just, for simplicity's sake, say it is today. If I'm lead generating and I'm making phone calls, if I don't get an appointment or referral, as long as I've met someone to add to my Met group to follow up with down the road, or I've connected with someone to build that relationship, it was also a successful lead generation call. Right. When I go back to that stat earlier of the 50-1, a lot of people heard 50-1 and they thought, oh my gosh, that's 49 people rejecting me. That's not what that is. The 49 people, you're strengthening the relationship, or you've just met them and you haven't earned the right for them to trust you with any real estate needs that they have or people they do. So you've got to make sure that you've got to keep that mindset in there, because by the way, when you get into the regular, well, Greg's pretty consistent on his lead generation. I think it's fair to say he's probably more consistent than most people in there. Greg, not to put you on the spot, have you ever had a day where you lead generate and you don't actually get an appointment or get a referral?
All the time.
All the time, right? So, but he understands that on those days, he's strengthening the relationship, or he's meeting new people to bring in and add to his Met group. Okay. Now, it can't be every day, right? If it's every day where all you're doing is strengthening relationships or adding to your Met group, you're not getting any business. And then that comes down to more than likely what you're saying, what scripts you're using. Okay. So let's talk about capture. Page 25. So the capture side of this is always focus on getting enough information so that you can contact the prospective client. Right. So the information that you want to have enough information so you can control the conversation. Right. And make sure that you're the one who controls the follow-up and everything there. A big script that I had jotted down here are a very simple sentences, you know, because I find that a lot of people have phone numbers for people, and that's really kind of it. Right. I mean, you'll have, because you've gotten it in your phone, you might have an email, you definitely don't have an address. Right. One script that I've just used a lot is we have it digitally to get someone's email. So if I'm prospecting and I talk to Sarah and we talk about something, and maybe we talk about the real estate market and be like, well, I've got some stats on that. If you're interested, we have it digitally. What's the best email to send it to? You just do an assumptive close on there. Typically we say, would you like me to email it to you? And then by that point, you were just giving them an option to say no. Now, let me be very clear. Well, let me ask a question to make some clarity. Is there a chance, let's just use that random script I just did. Let's say Sarah and I had met at a networking event, and we start talking about the real estate market. And then I say, well, actually, I've got these great market stats. I have them digitally. What's the best email to send them to? Is there a chance that Sarah's not interested in those? Yes, absolutely. There is a chance that she is not going to be interested in it. And it's not personal, right? So don't take it personally, right? She is just, it's follow-up. It's strengthening the relationship. Her personality at that point in time may just be that she doesn't care. So don't take that personally. All right, so opportunities with seller leads. A couple of them they talk about in here. Seller that's in residence, personally, family that living in their primary residence. Your opportunities include winning the listing, and they may also plan to buy. That's one of the things that Sarah said when we were talking about the advantages of taking listings. Job relocation seller, motivated by a transfer of a new location. We're seeing a lot of this right now. Right? People are moving for various reasons. So your opportunities include winning the listing, becoming a listing agent for the relocation company. Don't be, where we don't have a formal relocation internally, we have approvals with all of the relocation companies to work with them. And I've never had one where if we weren't currently approved, we didn't get approved, right? So you can become a relocation agent with them should you decide to do so. You can also refer the seller to an agent outside the area. And so your opportunities there. Investor seller, this is a seller of an investment property, possibly one with tenants. You're winning your way into a lucrative deal of multiple deals, gaining referrals. The sellers often have referrals for you. And then one that's not in here is, where is that tenant going? We actually have a client that has become a fairly decent wealth determiner that ended up being, they were a tenant in a short sale that we had years ago. And we just helped them find a home. Actually, we helped them find a rental at the time. They went into a temporary rental, and then they've purchased one house, then sold it and purchased another one and purchased an investment property with us. So you have a lot of, again, those, by the way, and all those conversations, had I not been thinking these 3 or 4 successful outcomes of building the relationship and adding to METs, I never would have considered them long-term leads, right? That's the challenge, by the way, of lead generation, and only focusing on a system like that is you get stuck in the now business, right? If you don't have a good follow-up system. So just keep that in mind. So talking about capture techniques that work, page 26 just talks about, different times of day will work. I know we always talk about 9 to 12, 8 to 11, the 3 hours in the morning. Mainly that comes from the one thing where this is the time that you're most effective. You'll have the highest conversion rate, but there may be times in the, maybe types of lead generation you're doing that would need to be done at different times of day. What are some examples of those? What would be an example of a seller lead generation or a seller lead that you maybe would need to contact at a different time of day? Not everybody at once. So seeing this a lot with expireds, right? If people are going after expired listings, they may contact them a couple of times during the day or reach out to them a couple different times in the day. Also could be, obviously, if you're doing an open house, you'd be doing that at a different time of day. If you are going to be any sort of circle prospecting or door knocking, you may pick a time. Well, not now, there are a lot more people home now, but there are also a lot of times where if you lived in, we're prospecting an area where you knew that most of them were dual income, it may be a better time to prospect after business hours, right? Just be careful you're not setting those different hours based on you, not based on them, right? You don't want to base it on, I'm just not a morning person. Well, that doesn't count, right? It only counts if it's actually for the prospect. So capturing, then we go to connecting, right? So connecting talks about is when you're connecting with your sellers to lay the foundation for their working relationship. You're auditioning, right? You've got to understand that when you go to the connecting side of it, from the moment you've captured their information till they sign the listing agreement, till they get to closing, you're continuing this working on connecting with them. It's a good script. I'm a professional and my goal is to sell your house for the best price quickly with the least amount of trouble to you. Like your doctor or any other professional, I have to ask some questions to understand your situation well enough that I can give you the best advice. This is a great way to start because a lot of times people come in, you'd be surprised. Agents just come in and they start regurgitating on sellers, right? Here's what I'm going to do. Here's why you need to hire me. Here's why I'm great, blah, 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 blah. And so I use a script similar to this where I sit down and say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I do things a little bit differently because every situation is different from everyone. I've got a short list of questions that I'd love to go through with you because I want to make sure I understand your goals so I can make them my goals because they are different from everyone. Now, I don't want to call it a white lie. The small stretch in the truth in that is at the end of the day, the seller goals ultimately end up being one of 3 things: price, timing, communication. Right? Or some variation of those. Yet, I want to know the why behind those goals. Why the price is important, why the timing is important, because I'm using this whole time to connect with them. The pitfalls they talk about is not asking questions to get to know the seller and becoming so overly confident that you lose the lead. Be careful on that. Be careful on that. Now, I will say, because it talks about this, page 28 kind of goes into connecting with them and their personality. I would say be careful that you're not so focused on connecting that you turn off certain personalities, right? If I'm sitting down with a high D, if I'm sitting down with Greg and I'm going through questions with him and Greg, I'm going to be to the point with those questions. I know his personality is, I need to ask him and I probably need to preempt every now and then that, hey, I know we got a lot to talk about. I know your time is valuable. I just want to get a couple things just jotted down here if you don't mind. Whereas if I'm sitting down with someone who's a super high I, if I try to go bullet point through those, they're going to get annoyed and think I'm insensitive. Right. So just, again, we talk about that, know their personality and communicate with those styles. Does that make sense? So let's talk about it. Let's do, let's talk about how we would communicate with each one of these. We'll just do this as a group exercise. It'll break it up a little bit. I'm on page 29, but you don't need to see it. I'm gonna read the customer kind of what they say, and then we're gonna talk about how we communicate with them. So the first customer says, I've done quite a bit of detailed research on the internet already and talked to others in my neighborhood. I already have a price in mind to sell my house. I want to see all the data that you have in this neighborhood before I make a decision to work with you. So who is this person? If you're familiar with the disc, yeah, definitely a high C. Right, put it in there. Okay, so what are some things you want to be aware of in communicating with them?
You have to be very thorough and have everything in front of them to see it so they can actually put their hands on it and touch it and see it.
Yep. You want to be very thorough, and you want to know exactly, they want to know exactly where you got the numbers. And as Greg put it here, don't fudge the numbers. This is not a high C is not a person where you can make stats say anything. They're a 1 + 1 is 2. And if you try to say, well, it's actually 3 unless you do it within this certain period of time, it's not that it's a trust thing, it's a black and white thing, right? They see it very black and white. Now, where do you use that as your advantage? Where will that be a positive for you?
Well, we have a lot of technology and a lot of the stats that are available to us to provide.
Yeah. The big advantage is you're prepared, right? You come in and you know prepared. What Greg puts in there, and this is kind of what I was getting at, is use their research to close them, right? Well, that thing with the high C is, and it's not an ego thing. Well, sometimes it can be. It is they want to make sure that their input is part of the whole situation. So when I hear his suggestion, use their research to close them, I want to make sure, and this is what I would do for pricing as a high C. I'd say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, here's how we go about pricing homes. We're going to take a look at some market research that I've done. I'm going to go super, super detailed, and it's going to have the computer's going to generate some information for us. And I want to compare that because I want to see what you got from yours, because again, a lot of times when you're using that research information, we may get something different. So if we do, we want to find out why. We're going to compare those, and then we're going to put the human aspect into it. We'll put our human hat on and see if we need to adjust it based on things that are going on either in the market or with your home. How does that sound? Right. So when you ask it that way, you don't, too often we go into this like guns a-blazing, like it's me versus the seller, right? I'm going to come in and I'm going to win this battle. It's like, no, I'm going in, I'm sitting down I'm getting down on the carpet with them like they're my kids and saying, hey, let's talk about this. Let's have a conversation about this and get on the same page. Customer number 2, I don't have time or a bunch of phone calls and meetings. Tell me what you think the home should be priced, and let's see if we can get this deal done. Who's that? That's definitely the high D, right? Now, here's where you got to caution yourself on the high D. You need to go quickly, but you don't skip steps. You may abbreviate them, but your needs analysis, this is where we go way wrong on high Ds, is we completely skip the needs analysis. Because we're like, oh, he just wants the answers. Be like, awesome. Greg, I completely understand. I want to go through these. I'll go through everything really, really quickly. If you don't mind, I just want to ask a couple quick clarifying questions so I don't waste your time. Is that fair? Great. What are they? And bam, scale 1. And we'll talk about that in the pre-listing side of it. So you just want to get to the point, but you also don't want to skip any steps. Now, you may skip parts of the steps, right? In a high D, when I'm talking about marketing, they don't care about staging and why that's better. As part of our listing consultation, I'm going to go through, I'm going to give you some tips on how you should stage your house just so it'll show better. Does that sound good? Yes, great. Whereas someone else they're going to want to hear more about the staging. Customer 3, I've lived here for 10 years, seen a lot of changes. Our neighbor Bob now owns several houses in the neighborhood. We got 2 new neighbors this year. I really keep up with things that are going on in the neighborhood. Who's this person? There's a high I, and you're going to have a 2-hour listing consultation, right? You want to have some time on that one. Customers 4 and 5, we really need to get the house sold. I'm not sure about the listing price. So number 4, we really need to get the house sold. What is that telling you? Is that giving you any information on their personality?
Yeah, I don't think that they're very detailed oriented.
Right.
They're more action oriented.
Mm-hmm. So let's say in this case, it's basically saying you've got two people that are together. One of them saying we really need to get the house sold. The other one saying, well, I'm not sure about the listing price. So how would you address that?
You would need to really explain that in your professional, that you need to show them the stats, but then also make sure that it's detailed enough to provide the quick, that just because you want your house sold, we want to make sure that we get the price right and show
Right.
them those detailed information.
Right. So the big thing on these is because you really from the one sentences big thing, you can't tell who they are. The big thing is go deeper on both of these. We really want to get the house sold. Okay, so tell me what that means. Is that a timing thing? Well, yeah, we're in a hurry. Well, tell me a little bit. Okay, so what's the ideal? If you could paint the perfect picture of the ideal closing date, what is that? July 31st. Okay, great. So tell me about that. What is it about July 31st? You guys told me you're moving to Charlotte. Is there a deadline to get up there? So you just dig deeper on that part. Right. And then the same thing with the list price. Well, I'm not sure about the list price. Okay. So tell me more about that. I know it sounds like an obvious question, but when you say you're not sure about the list price, where do you think it should be? Or why do you not agree with where we are right now? And don't assume simple answers should therefore then skip the question, right? Because a lot of people, they'll be afraid because so Lynn and I talk about this all the time because she's a high C. She's a very literal person. So when she sees, I'm just not sure about the listing price, as a high C, she doesn't, because she's actually she asks a ton of questions. But as a high C, you're gonna be like, okay, well, they think it's too high and they just want to get more money. And it may not be that, right? It may be, well, it may not be based on any of the stats. It may be because cousin Bob just sold his house and got a little bit more. You just want to find out where that's coming from. Because then you can tie the two together. Because if you got someone saying, I'm not sure about the listing price, they say, I think we should be able to test the market and maybe get 350 versus, 335. Okay, maybe. Yet if we do that, can you see where it will take you longer to sell the house? Are you okay with that? And then you keep going back to the motivation on all of them. Questions about that? All right, so let's talk about this pre-qualifying during the capture. On page 30. So pre-qualify the seller during the capture. High producing agents, and one of the best things that I did, not relating to the production side, is having a lead sheet, right? And we have a seller lead sheet that we use for all seller leads. Again, this goes back to what we talked about before. And actually, I will pull it up really quickly. All right, so we have it. We call it a pre-listing interview. I only have it in PDF. I don't know where the editable one is, but you're welcome to copy and paste everything out of it. So let me pull this one back up. And here's a couple reasons that I love this. And we absolutely stole this from someone else. So please feel free to do the same. So you see where it says pre-listing interview. Is that what y'all are seeing right now? Okay. So basically what I love about this is it keeps me uniform, because I tend to be all over the place, right? So I'll just be like, oh, tell me about your house and why it's so wonderful, and none of that really matters. And it gives me a script. So I'm always prepared. So regardless of whether or not this is my best friend that just decided to put their house on the market, or this is a a lead from an agent in Seattle that, you know, has someone that's moving there and just needs an agent. It's the same thing. It's like, well, great. So glad that we're talking today. Tell me a little bit about where you're moving. And I just go down this and follow the script. I fill this in as I go. You know, I can start to circle. By the way, these questions help me identify where they are from a personality standpoint. And then I go through, well, great, that's awesome. What's taking you to Charlotte and how soon do you need to be there? Jot that down. Awesome. Perfect. That sounds great. So let me ask you, if we sold your home in 30 days, would that pose a problem for you? Again, it might. Some people, this couple, by the way, that I keep referencing, them selling in 30 days would not have been good for them. They would have had to find another place to live and that sort of thing. I said, well, great. Our research shows that homes priced right sell in about 45 days or less. So we just want to make sure we take that into consideration when we sit down and talk about, you know, the plan to market your home. Okay, great. Well, so enough about that. Let's get to the fun part. Tell me a little bit about your house. And again, if you have some of this information, great. You know, a lot of times people say, well, gosh, you know, I can get a lot of this beforehand. Don't. Use this as an opportunity to have a discussion with them. Great. I know that, you know, Greg had given me your information, said you lived in Mount Pleasant. You know, tell me what's your street address? So I'll start doing the information. Awesome. That's in Carolina Park. Great. And then you start filling it out and then focus on these if you know. So tell me about any upgrades that you've done, particularly as it relates to, say, the kitchen or the master suite. Anything else you need to know about it? So again, use this as a discussion here. It's important to use this so you're not saying, hey, Sarah, tell me a little bit about your house. And then 45 minutes later, you haven't even set an appointment yet and they're walking you through the house. So just be careful on that. I changed the verbiage on this a little bit, but I say the same thing. So, well, great. When we meet, I'm sure that you've kind of done some research. Do you have a price that you realistically expect to list your home for? Push back on this if they don't give you an answer. Maybe twice. Maybe twice. And again, know the personality. Well, Joseph, you know, that's kind of what we want to see what your opinion was on that. Okay, awesome. And I'm absolutely going to do some research that will take into consideration market stats and nothing else. I'd always like to ask though, is there a number you have in mind that just based on what you know of the market? Well, yeah, we thought about this. Or, you know, if you get one of those, they're kind of acting like they're testing you. Don't let that be the hill you die on. Like, I know a lot of people's mentality is, you know, take control over it. That's fine. Let them test you, because my script at the listing consultation is going to get past that. So I'm not worried about it now. I'm just worried about getting out to the appointment. Well, great. We study home prices regularly. So I assume when we talk about this, you'll want to price your home where it's competitive and actually causes it to sell. Does that make sense? Or is that a fair assumption? Well, great. I don't ask often about the owing on the property or payments. I would now on payments. I'd say, hey, let me ask you, you know, during the pandemic, there was a lot of forbearance that was this, you know, did you take advantage of any of those? Just want to kind of take some notes on that. This script right here was a game changer. As you can imagine, our weekends and evenings get booked pretty quickly. So when would be a good time to meet with you during the week between whatever time? Always ask to meet during business hours. You can always make the exception, but don't just assume that they're okay, just that you have to go meet every listing at 6 o'clock in the evening, okay? Awesome. So I'm going to email you some more information on our business. Would you take about 10 minutes or so to review it before we get there? Great. We have that digitally. What's the best email address for you? So we have all this filled out and then done. And then we have some stuff in here that would be done, you know, if they, when you follow up to confirm, and or if you have an admin that does it, these are, you know, you can ask these, hey, before I come, what are some things that you're looking for in an agent? Well, great. And if you don't know this, who can we thank for sending your way? And then do you have any questions I can answer before meeting Tuesday at 5? So this can either be from you or your admin staff. Okay. So that basically just kind of covered what was on that page there. There's an example of it on page 31. And now we're going to go back into, I do ask if they're current. So Greg said, I do ask if they're current on their HELOCs. Ask them if they are the person on the deed, et cetera. Yeah, those are questions too. This one question that said, we just never changed it. I don't use the term with all the decision makers. I personally feel like it's a little awkward. I would say, you know, I did notice from the tax records that, you know, Sarah, that you're there on the deed. Has that changed at all? Is there anyone else on the deed? Or I'm showing here that it's 2 people on the deed. Is that the case? Because I want to make sure that I'm covering the basis and answering questions for anybody who's going to be part of this process. Absolutely. All right. So jumping now to close. We did connect, now close for the appointment. Because of how we've broken this up, I'm not going to spend quite as much time on the scripting side of this, because you'll have them in front of there, but we are going to go through, we'll set it up where you can have a setting where you can do some role playing. We'll go through some specific ones on here. Having a good lead sheet actually will get the close for the appointment. Really, the closing for the listing consultation we'll get into later. If you're prospecting sellers, page 33 talks about if you've called them. That's all, you know, some real easy ones are, hey, based on the information that we've had, this is a really simple one. Based on the information that we've talked about, I think it'd be a good idea for us to sit down and see if it makes sense to work together. How does that sound? I mean, just that type of simple closing is an easy one to do. Just ask for it. You know, again, you're getting the appointment. The reason where we get backed up on these appointments is we bring up or we allow objections to be brought up and we try to answer them in the phone call. Now, obviously, now we're being a little more sensitive to how quickly we're going to meet face to face. But even if you're setting yourself up for a Zoom listing consultation, which, by the way, I don't know why you would do anything different now. Set it up to do the Zoom, and then if it's something we're going to work for, you know, I'll come and tour the house. That's great. Use your judgment on that. But there's a handful of good scripts on those that are just talking about, you know, got a couple questions I want to ask you to make sure, you know, I bring the right information for when we meet. So you're doing an assumptive close, and then when you go through the lead sheet, you actually get them. You basically just walk right into it. You walk right into, okay, when are we meeting? What tends to happen is when you allow them to run that conversation, you don't have a lead sheet. They're getting all the answers for them to make a decision before they've ever really had the chance to see your presentation. You just want to be careful about that. All right, page 34 talks about the top 10 classic closes, the hard close. Let's meet. Soft close. I really enjoyed visiting with you. Would you like to get together and discuss this further? Again, most of this is covered in your lead sheet, right? Now, if they don't, if they're not sure if this is the first part, a lot of times you can do these closes and say, awesome, let's talk about, we'll set a date, but then still go through your lead sheet, right? So if you do one of these closes and say, yeah, I'd definitely love to meet with you, just if you get the appointment easily, don't skip the lead sheet, because that's part of the capturing for the rest of the process. It's all a process. And the lead sheet for me was probably the area I skipped the most in the beginning because it's just more work. And I realized that it was actually creating more work for the listing consultation. So you just want to make sure that you avoid that. All right, questions and example and objections we're going to come back to. Jump to page 39, which is the cultivate. And on the cultivate side of it, this is where you then follow up and stay in touch, right? You've either gotten the appointment, right? And then you cultivate after the appointment, or you haven't gotten the appointment after connect and you cultivate to get the appointment. And that can come for one of two reasons. One, they're not a lead yet, or they're a lead that's 60, 90 days down the road. I am, and Greg, I'd love your opinion on this, but I'm under the impression of even if someone is down the road, if it's a lead, if it's a seller that you really, really want, you can still go ahead and have that meeting and come up with a plan with them, but get in front of them now versus waiting till down the road. Because my concern on that is they'll get in front of someone else who's a good closer, and then that person gets a commitment from them. Greg,
I will put them under I will put them under contract. I've had leads that I've held for 3 months before. With same thing with buyers. If I'm sitting down talking to you, and we're agreeing about the agency, we are going under contract.
Yeah. And it actually is a little easier to do now with the new clear cooperation stuff, is because there's not a limit. You don't, you can get a listing agreement signed now and hold on to it for 6 months. The
Correct.
challenge is if you start talking about it publicly, that's a different discussion altogether. But it actually is easier to do that now with the new listing agreement. Whereas before, if you had that signed, you'd have to put the verbiage in there. Now you don't. So that's a good one. Yep. Awesome. All right. So Cultivate talks about staying in touch with a plan. We understand that. So questions about the lead conversion side of things? Anything that came up, anything I want to, with my screen share, I tend to sometimes not get to see the chat. I don't think I missed anything.
No, but just an antidote, if you don't mind.
So yeah, go ahead.
As we were here on the last hour and a half, I did sell a house. So,
Nice.
you know, I didn't have to go out and show it. I didn't have to do anything else. And definitely listings where you got to be.
Yep. Yeah, and they're harder to get now, but man, they are there, and they're leveraged right now for sure. That's awesome.
And to further that, I'm laying on my bed with my foot up. So
No,
you know,
nice.
it's a tough job.
It is a tough job, but somebody's got to do it, right? Awesome. Congratulations on that. All right, pre-listing. Here's what I'll say about the pre-listing before we jump into it. Do not overcomplicate this. Do it, but do not overcomplicate it. Our pre-listing packet, and so many people that I know's pre-listing packet is the exact same thing as their listing presentation. It's just sent ahead of time, right? So don't overthink this. The purpose of this, well, who currently uses one? Okay, so the purpose of pre-listing is it's a package, it's a process, it's getting buy-in. Basically just walking through what it says on page 45. Pre-listing package plays two critical roles. Number one is pre-selling. The pre-listing materials are specifically designed to build sellers' confidence in you. This is a big one. The second one is saving time. A strong pre-listing package will make the consultation experience smoother and probably shorter than it otherwise would have been. The third thing that it does is it helps qualify and not label, but identify, that's a better word. Identify the personality of the person you're meeting, right? Because a lot of times when you go in and you say, hey, did you have the chance to take a look at the information I sent you? Yeah, I did. By the way, I love that one testimonial you had from so-and-so over in so-and-so street. I mean, that's awesome. Sounds like you're really happy. Okay, well, I've got a high I. They read through and that's good, right? No, I didn't really get a chance to take a look at it. I saw that you sent me something. Okay, that's a high D, great bullet point. It doesn't mean, by the way, them not going in to read it is not an invitation for you to then go present it when you get there from the listing consultation. Just be very, very clear on that. So what's in a pre-listing package? What are some things that you think should be in it? This is stuff we can jot down on the next couple pages, page 46. What are some things that you feel should be in there?
Client testimonials.
Client testimonials is a good one.
Your actual
else?
marketing package, so you're not going through that entire thing when you get there. Expectations of communications, team structure if you have any, that kind of stuff.
Yep. So I'll show you, and we use an updated one now. It's almost the exact same materials. We use the one from KW Connect. So you should see on there, it says a guide to selling your home. So what you'll see. Okay. So these are, and again, this is the exact same thing that I bring to the listing presentation. And I'm not saying this is perfect. I'm just saying this is what we've used and we've tweaked it. We do, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being not so desirable, what's the one thing that has to happen in this transaction? This, by the way, is my listing consultation. This is what I sit down and do, is I go through these questions right here. I go through what the thing that Greg talked about that's super important is you go through what the selling process is, what the marketing process is, and all of these things, because your time with them is a consultation. It is not a presentation. It is finding out. Now, for some people, if you've got a super, super high detailed person that wants to know everything, it might be a presentation, but most of the time it's a consultation with questions. So we have information on determining the value of the property. We talk about communication, what they need to do to get ready, some tips that they have on there, staging, some just general information. Again, when I get there, I don't look at probably majority of this. I get to, and I can send you a copy of this as well. The two most important parts of the pre-listing and then my listing consultation are these two here. This one is these two separate graphs. Now, I will tell you in this one, because this is one that I've shared before, so I think it's probably a little dated on the info, but they're pretty much the same. The default one by Keller Williams only gives this graph, which is information sources used in the home search. I don't find that to be as helpful as where buyers found the home they purchased. And the reason I do that is because this right here, followed by the following page, which has all of the different listing channels and extended market research, and there's a more updated one in Command, will answer most of the objections of what they want me to do, right? If you get things like, hey, well, we want you to have an open house every weekend. Okay, well, again, if that's not part of your listing promise, don't say you'll do it. Now, if I've never not taken a listing because they want open houses, though. I'll find someone to do open houses. But if they start talking about different advertising or stuff like that, I always go to, listen, after we do the pricing in the listing consultation, I go right to this and say, here are the 3 areas that we focus on. How we're going to get the most exposure, how we're going to get the most information out to agents, and then signage and advertising after that. Everything else is going to be word of mouth, because these are where the buyers actually found their home. That's what we're going to go. We're not going to go out and say what made them popular. We're going to go out and say, where did they actually sell? Okay. So again, I'm getting a little ahead of myself in the listing consultation. We have in here the 14-step marketing plan. Again, you can download all of this for KW. Just make sure that you read it and you're actually going to do everything that's in there. For instance, this one catches people a lot. Create a home book, comment cards, and flyers to place inside the property. If that's not something you're going to do, then take this out, because a high C will read it. And then 48 hours after your listing, if you don't have that in there, you've not fulfilled your promise on there. Not that that's ever happened to me. And then it goes into, pricing, values, what affects price, just some general information. Okay. What are some other things that you would put into a pre-listing packet? Anyone?
I put some market information in there,
Okay.
just to give an overall look at, see where the market's trending.
Okay. Market info. What else? Some people will put contracts in there. Here's some of the contracts you'll see. We actually do that as part of our follow-up after our initial contact with a seller lead. So I guess you could say that's a pre-listing. Testimonials, I think Allison had said that. That's an important one. If you're newer and you don't have a lot, then go get some. Especially if you have past clients, you should at least have a couple. I mean, we had our first couple years in, we leveraged the heck out of the first couple transactions that we had of testimonials. I mean, those were our biggest fans. But over time, as you build that, that'll be helpful. What else?
I have a question, actually. What do you mean by contracts? Are they examples of contracts? What do you mean when you
So
say you have
great
contracts
question.
in there?
It would be, here's what the listing agreement looks like. Not filled out, just hey, if you wanted to review this, here's what a purchase and sale agreement looks like. We'll be reviewing this after you list your home with me to go through everything. However, I just want to give you just an example of what these look like so you can start to familiarize yourself with them.
Just
Yeah.
on that,
Yes.
does South Carolina have a copy of our listing agreement and the agreement to buy and sell with a big sample watermark across every page?
I don't think it does, but I think you can print a watermark when you do save to PDF. I think you can save it that way.
That I found that very helpful to be able to leave one and somebody, because there are some people that want to read over it. I call it bathroom reading, but
Yes.
they want to
I
read
call
over
it Yeah, I call it can't fall asleep reading. So, okay, so Greg is saying in zip forms you can download a sample of them.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome.
How about a seller net sheet? Would you leave one with them?
I don't leave one in the pre-listing. I do give one after the listing consultation.
Okay.
You know, for me, and I'm open to any sort of differing opinions on this. You know, for me, the if I'm not able to have conversation around the stats, I'm going to be as vague as possible with them, right? Because, and not for any other reason than if I start doing a net sheet and I put $250 on there for the, you know, for the doc prep fees, and their best friend's a closing attorney that'll give them a $50, and they're like, wow, I mean, I'm not going to pay $250. You know, it's small. I've just found over time, the more that I've done that, it doesn't give me any room to actually be able to talk about it. Same with stats. Like, you know, Greg was saying, you give a general market stats thing. Until I can actually be in front of them to say why we picked the houses that we did and those sorts of things, I just want to make sure I can have that conversation. Anything else? Greg, do you add anything separate or spectacular, out of the ordinary to pre-listing stuff?
Not really. I mean, I've seen other people go as far as when they take a pre-listing, during the pre-listing interview, they talk about what kind of candy do you like? What kind of coffee do you like? So when they deliver the package, it's a personalized package to them. I can't remember the woman's name. She's been at family reunion a few times, but they make a
Jackie,
big production. Yep.
What's her name? Jackie somebody. Yeah, this is her thing. She teaches a whole.
They go overboard.
Yeah, they do a good job. They sell a ton of homes. You know, some things too that we've heard, especially in a competitive market, some simple things, you know, have a photo of the house in there as well with a sample flyer. You know, it doesn't take much to do that. Videos, again, there's a pre-listing packet, but there's also a pre-listing process. So it's like two separate things, and your lead generation should not stop just because you've gotten the appointment, right? Your lead generation should have, you know, like, so for us, that's when we send the contract. I know of a couple of agents. I haven't been super consistent on this. I've done it every now and then, and it's been super effective. So I don't know why I wouldn't make it a standard. Is they'll send a quick video, you know, as a follow-up to say, hey, you know, Shenandoah, it's so great talking to you. Thank you for the information. I look forward to meeting with you on Friday. In the meantime, if you have any questions, this number, you know, that I text you is the best way to get a hold of me. And put them there. Jackie. Oh, I knew you were going to ask that. Jackie Ellington, I think. I'll get it. No, you're fine. No. Yeah, I'll get that. All right. Anything else on the, the seller homework, by the way? I will tell you that I have in here, in the pre-listing packet, I have this questions to ask your agent. Make sure you know how to answer them for yourself. And then I have a whole section on how does someone win with you with some blanks, and what do you feel you have the right to expect from me as your agent. If you get there and it's filled out, you have the listing. Like if they've filled it out, you have to say, awesome, John, I see that you filled all this information out. Is there any other questions I need to ask? Or any questions you have for me? Well, great. Is there any reason that we shouldn't just get the paperwork filled out? And that's happened. It was one of the higher end listings that we had. And I just went for it. I was like, you know what? People keep telling me that this works, and went for it. He's like, no, you covered everything. This is great. Thank you for sending it to me. Now, if he says no, well, now, I want to learn some more about what, okay, great. Just wanted to make sure, and then go right into your presentation. Okay. All right. What time we got? Oh, 3:30. We're doing well. Let's jump into the listing consultation. All right. So on the listing consultation, page 55 is where I am. So prepare yourself. I will say that one of the things that I was the worst at early on was lack of preparation for consultations. And then I heard an example given from, Tony DeCello. I don't remember his name. And he said, listen, if you're not preparing for your listing consultations, then your listing consultations themselves become the preparation. And a lot of times you don't get them. He said, so if your average sales price is $300,000, you can say your commission's roughly $9,000, and you don't prepare for a listing presentation, and then you go out and you practice on the seller and you don't get it, then you just paid $9,000 for practicing your listing. I was like, yeah, ouch. That's absolutely right. So know your scripts and your materials, understand the market, understand how to explain the market, use communication techniques that build rapport, be a consultant, not just an agent, and build an appointment toolkit. Now, when it says build an appointment toolkit, what does that mean?
Is that like the lead sheet that you answered questions on?
So it's something you build over time, and I kind of jumped ahead, we'll do that. But it's things that you could possibly want during your listing consultation. So for instance, I can tell you right now that I have in front of me now, not just in my bag, part of my appointment toolkit is the raw data of the basic numbers in the event that I ever need to turn to it. I have in my appointment toolkit, I have I just drew a blank on what it was. Oh yeah, the two charts that show where they found their home, where they searched for their home, and where they found their home. Like I have that as something because I always want to be able to turn to it. So things that you'll build over time. So page 56, know your scripts and materials. Not using scripts because they don't want to sound insincere. That's a pitfall, right? And the problem is, and this will be a game changer for a lot of people, is you're very personable. You're fun to hang out with. I know all of you fairly well. We've spent some time together. You're all very fun to hang out with. And the problem with those of us that are fun to hang out with is we rely on that, right? And then all of a sudden we go on all these listing presentations and they enjoyed hanging out with us, but they're not hiring us. And we want them to hire us. That's super important to know your scripts and be able to work as a consultant. The truth is scripts only seem fake and insincere when they haven't been learned thoroughly. And that's just the big thing to remember. Understanding the market. So the ones that they talk about here is inventory, how much is for sale? Is it rising or falling? The days on the market, how long it's taking properties to sell. Price per square foot. I don't love that that's in here. I think people get way too wrapped up in that. Yet, we also have to understand that people get way too wrapped up in it. So we want to make sure that we know how to explain it, okay? And sorry, I X'd out on my screen here. Changes in local landscape, major employers, shopping schools. You know, this is something I didn't do a lot of. And then a couple of years ago, an agent, most of you probably know, his name's Micah. He's in the Mount Pleasant office. He was actually on a panel at Family Reunion. He was the rookie of the year for the region. And he made a really good point. He said, you know, you've got about 30 seconds to create some validity with people because they're going to meet all these other agents. And he said, one of the areas that I've just done a really good job is I'm very familiar with what's going on in the economic market locally, right? So you don't need to be a super statistician, but when you've got big things happening, when you've got big employers coming to town, you've got big markets that are affected here, those are really good to know. Using communication techniques to build rapport. So if you went through the DISC class, that was a big thing that was super helpful on that. Ask open-ended questions, stay in curiosity, mirror and match their behavior. You know, again, we've got some basic communication today. Be a consultant, not just an agent. So what does that mean? So be a consultant, not just an agent.
I guess kind of like you're their agent, but you're a consultant. Like you're helping them to make the best decisions, but also kind of educating them at the same time.
Exactly. That's the big one, is you're educating them at the same time. right? You're coming with information, which is why I loved your answer earlier where you said, I showed up prepared, I knew my stuff, and I was confident about it, right? Because that's how you're a good consultant. It's not, I can't tell you how many times though that I've said, so I'm probably not, full disclosure, I'll use pricing as an example. I'm probably not the best when it comes to aggressively consulting sellers on pricing. I don't lose a lot of listings to pricing, yet an example of a consultant versus just an agent that comes in and say, so Mr. and Ms. Seller, here's what the market has told us. You said you have some time and you're really more interested in getting as much money out of the property than you are selling in 30 days. So we've set a range of 360 to 375. So if you price the home at 375, I'm not as confident it will sell at that number. And I do know it will take longer. However, if you know at the end of the day when you close on your property and you started at 375, you feel better about it, then that's something that we can take into consideration, as long as we have the understanding that if that doesn't work, we lower the price. Now, if timing is the big thing for you, I know at 360, the stats tell us that you've got a 97% chance of selling at that price, and it's probably going to take 30 days versus upwards of that. So with those two in mind, those two thought processes in mind, where would you rather price the house? Right now, a lot of people will come in and say, listen, you need to price it at 360 because if you have to do price reductions, these are the stats. And I don't disagree with those, right? I'm not saying that my way is a better way. I'm just saying that from a consultant standpoint, I want them to know, because I'm married to a high C, I want them to know why the process is all this. So the reason that we need to be at 360 is this. But if I tell them the risk at 375 and they're still willing to take it, and I'm willing to take it based on their motivation, I'm going to do it. Now, you got to draw the line somewhere. I'm not going to go to 400 or be something ridiculous like that. You always want to have the range in there. All right, and then build the appointment toolkit. We talked about that. Some things that are in there. Staging tips. The appointment toolkit as well is I always have the property disclosure in there because that's just something I'm leaving. I don't care if they fill that out there. I want the listing agreement signed before I leave, so I'll have that in there. Just some things over time. Anything that you bring out of the ordinary, Greg, or just something that wasn't mentioned here?
No, you pretty much covered it. I think to be the consultant more than anything else is the biggest thing there.
Here's what will happen if you're not super familiar or you're revamping your business. Go in there prepared to give a presentation, but don't give it. Right? You want to have your toolkit and everything in there, and you can be prepared to give it, but don't ever go in assuming that this is all of a sudden where you're like setting up your PowerPoint presentation. Like it doesn't work that way. Right? Now, you may every now and then get someone to say, hey, I've got a ton of questions, like take me through all of this stuff, and you may have to do it. It's so few and far between that you're coming in as a consultant and you're asking questions. So let's talk about the listing consultation. So basically the consultation itself is going to be broken down these ways. And I'm going to walk you through kind of what it says in here. And then we're going to walk through kind of how I've not shortened it, but shortened it to make it a little more succinct for you. So confirm the appointment. Always want to do that. Again, this is part of the process. I've had this, again, you want to give that visual that Mark did. You're starting here, you're walking down the hallway, don't deviate from it, right? You've done your lead sheet, your pre-listing interview is what I call it. I'm just going to call the day before. Depending, again, use your judgment on your communication thus far. A text is fine as well. Confirm the appointment. Adopt a yes mindset. I like this, and this one took me a while to get around. As listing masters develop a personal routine to set their mindset for success before stepping up to the door. They know that they imagine their success becomes more ensured. When going to their listing consultation appointment, masters believe that the result is already yes. What are some things that you do to get in that yes mindset?
I ask questions that only they can answer yes to.
Okay, so you're actually going for the yes in there. What about from a routine standpoint to help with your mindset going in? Anything that you guys do?
Say again?
Anything that you do that your routine, like if you're going on a listing appointment, what are some things that you do to get in the right mindset?
Oh, the right mindset for myself.
Yeah.
Actually, sitting at the curb as I'm going over the paperwork, I'm usually 10 minutes early, 15 minutes early. Pull the paperwork out and give a quick review of the paperwork. And that's where I just say, the listing is mine. I will take this listing today. The listing is mine. I will take this. It's pretty much just getting myself focused on staying on track, not getting involved with conversation to an extreme point that we're talking about Uncle Dick's brother's uncle. You know, I mean, it's got to be towards, this is what I'm here for. I'm here to take the appointment, and I'm going to take the appointment.
Yep. Love it. Love it. I encourage the similar, 15 minutes, even if you get to the front of the neighborhood early, so you're not awkwardly sitting out in front of their house if you don't want to. I don't have any phone calls. I turn my phone off. I'll put it on airplane 15 minutes before, because I've gotten it. There are people in your life right now that simply by receiving correspondence from them stresses you out. So I don't even know what they say. I just know they sent me a text and I'm automatically like, oh God, here we go. And then I'm thinking about it the whole time.
Right.
So it's none of y'all. But so just do that, whatever it is that gets you in your mindset. I had a playlist that I'd play. I totally zone out, because here's the other thing to think in mind is this is your job interview. You're interviewing a job to help these people facilitate the largest financial transaction they've probably ever had. Right. So it's super important to do that. So when you get there, arrive early, be courteous, yet purposeful. There are some small things that I do find to be beneficial. I rarely, I do step back, let them invite me in. I love this script. Thank you so much, Greg, for having me here today to apply for the job of getting your home sold. Right? Like you just that they've invited, you're applying for the job. It's funny. I actually started this script myself. I had a buddy of mine. This was years ago, and he was changing jobs, and he was asking like he was talking about interviews, and I said, man, you ought to think about doing this and blah, blah, blah. He's like, you've been in real estate for the longest time. Like, when's the last time you actually applied for a job? He's kind of smug about it. I'm like, what do you think I do? Like, I apply for my job every day, right? That I go on these, and I changed that verbiage. I was like, I actually do. I'm going to start saying, thank you for letting me come apply for the job. Cause that is what you're doing. And oh, by the way, nobody else is saying that. It's going to help you set aside.
What I say is actually on the phone with them as I pre-qualify, hey, I'm applying for a job because I wake up every morning unemployed. This is what I do for a living. Well, I don't want to bother you. Well, this is what I do for a living. I apply for jobs all day. So
right.
Same thing. That's what we're doing.
I love it. I love it. So what if the sellers are ready to sign the agreement up front? I love this one. The script on the bottom of page 61 says, let me ask you a question. Did you get my pre-listing packet? Did you get a chance to go through it thoroughly? And did you have any questions? Get a chance to do your homework? Well, let me ask you this. Do you have any questions for me? Was there anything that troubled or concerned you? Nothing? All right. Well, where should we sit down and go over the paperwork? I will tell you, it took me a while to do that. Yet, if I got someone who was very engaged, the first couple times I got that out of the way and said, well, let's go down and go through the paperwork. Now, I will tell you more often than not, the answer is like, well, let's talk about some things, right? I'm not always getting it, but it's the first kind of step in the closing.
Yep.
Kitchen tour. You mind if we set things down in the kitchen? We'll chat in there, tour on it. There is a mindset that, in Bold, it was taught, have them wait while you go tour the home. That's personal preference if you would like. I've done that a couple of times. I found that having the right scripts when touring a home and asking the right questions keeps it succinct and also gives you the opportunity to build some rapport and get some stuff out of the way that you don't need to be going through in the listing consultation. Keeping your walkthrough checklist, have some things that you're keeping, it can be as simple as having the MLS paperwork. So you're just checking things off as you're going through, asking questions about the house. It's not time to give advice on the things to do with the house. And what I say is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if they ask things, well, what do you think about this? Say, you know what, because typically they have an opinion while they ask, but we were thinking about doing this. What do you think? You know what, that's probably a good idea. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to jot down a handful of things right now that should we decide to work together, I'll go through, I'll send it to you, and it'll be a checklist. You'll know exactly what needs to be done. We'll talk about some things that'll help your home more valuable versus your home more sellable. I'm just going to take some notes on here. Again, you don't know, you haven't warmed up enough to know if you have the right to start giving them some feedback. So just be careful on that. So then begin the conversation, page 63. Now I'm going to share with you this script, and I'm going to show you the first time I used it and why I never use it again. Well, I didn't use it for a while. I got better at it. It says, Mr. Ms. Seller, one of three things is going to happen in this meeting. Number one is you'll decide to list your house with me, which to be honest would be great. Number two, you'll decide not to list with me, which wouldn't be great. Or number three, I may decide that I'm able to take your listing. Does that sound fair? This actually is a very good script, right? Because it does let them know that, hey, this is an interview process for both of us. However, I use this my first buyer consultation. This woman came to my open house. I was in Atlanta at the time. She came in. I had her come into the office. This glass conference room in the very front. Sweet Georgia was the receptionist. She was awesome. And I sat down with this woman, and I basically verbatim said that, but not very eloquently. I was like, one of three things is going to happen. Number one, you'll choose to work with me. Number two, you won't choose to work with me. Or number three, I may not choose to work with you. And I kind of said it that way. And she put her hands and she was like, you know what? I'm very uncomfortable on how strong and aggressive you're kind of being with this. I don't think this is going to work. And she got up and walked out. And so I came out, and I'm, trying to be all badass, and I've got my suit on. Sorry, all brave. I got my suit on. I come out, and Sweet Georgia goes, baby, I'm sorry. And she just comes around and just gives me this big hug. I'm like worried about making my rent payment and all this, and like tearing up and everything. So I didn't use it for a while after that. But I did start using it because it does. It really does, when said correctly, it does set the tone of, hey, we're in this together kind of thing. And I don't want us to be in a relationship that we don't both want to be in. Number 5, uncover and prioritize needs. So here's what I'll say on this one. And this is actually the part where we spend the most amount of time in the consultation. Let me pull it up because I send. Let me find it. So mine is, share the screen again. All right, so mine is the needs analysis, and this is the cover sheet. So when I come into the listing, I have the pre-listing packet that I sent, and then I had the listing, all my stats, listing agreement, and then I have this. Why is it not opening? Okay, here it is. So it basically is, it's formatted weird on here because it's in Google Docs, but it basically is this sheet of paper that has these 3 questions on the scale of 1 to 10. I don't know why the formatting's so messed up. And I sit down, and this is where, and basically this is part 5 where it starts talking about the uncover and prioritizing needs. And I'll say, okay, so Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I just want to go through some questions with you. And I know a lot of times that people come in and they just start telling you about all the things that we want to do to sell your house. I'd really like to just ask you some questions so I can find out what your goals in this transaction are, because I want to make sure when we work together that our goals match your goals. How does that sound? Okay, great. So, and I literally will go through on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being this is the best transaction you've ever had, and 1 being not desirable at all. What's the one thing that could happen to make the sale of your home a 10? And they're either going to say 9 times out of 10 it's going to be price or timing, that we sell the house for $400,000. Okay, great. Let me ask you, you said 400,000, or you said the most amount, whatever that may be. If they don't say an amount, you dig deeper on that. If they do say an amount, you dig deeper. So you said 400,000. What's important to you about the 400,000? Well, Bob got his he sold his house for 400 in our house, or 380, and our house is tons better. It's like, okay, so you're basing that, like, the important part of the price is that you want to make sure you get a fair value for your house. Is that okay to assume that? Well, yeah. So with that, what is important about that fair value? So let's say we got $400,000 for your home. What's important to you about that? Well, it gives us enough money that we can cover our move and put a down payment on the next house, yada, yada, yada. And I'll go 3 deep on these, right? Because I want to find out, I don't care about the number anymore. I care about, it gives us enough money to get into our new house in Charlotte, or it gets us whatever it may be. Okay, great. So we got you enough money, because I'm changing the verbiage, by the way, because if 400,000 is not realistic, I'm not going to keep using the term 400,000. I'm going to go to the verbiage of, okay, great. So the most important thing to you is that, or the thing that'll make it a 10, I should say, is that you have the money that you could put down on the house that you guys are looking at buying in Charlotte. Awesome. Okay, so let's make it a 10 plus. We got you the money that you needed to put for a down payment on your house in Charlotte. What's something else that could happen in the transaction to make it a 10 plus? That we sell in 30 days. Okay, so to clarify, when you say sell in 30 days, meaning you want to close or you want to have a contract? Like, tell me more about that timing. Okay, so you want to be closing by August 15th. What's important about the deadline on August 15th? And again, I know I want to get away from August 15th, and I want to get to, we need to be moving to, we need to be selling and be ready to move to Anchorage or whatever it may be, or time for a new. Okay, awesome. Now, I know this is going to sound crazy because I feel, I'm asking a lot of questions, but let's add one more thing. Let's just add one more thing to it. It makes it a 10 plus plus. We got you the money for your new home in Charlotte. We've got you there in time for you to start your job and not have to worry about temporary housing. Let's add one more thing to it that's a 10 plus plus. What does that look like? And normally they don't know, or it's going to be, well, we just don't want to be nitpicked. We don't want a smooth transaction or communication or whatever it may be. And I do the same thing there. That has become now the needs that we have on it. And I go to that for all the objection handling. I go back to that for everything. So then when I jump back into this whole philosophy they have, is now you're going to check for commitment, right? Which is basically what step 6 is I'm going to go back, I'm going to check for commitment on them. I'm going to say, okay, great. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, thank you, first of all, because now I know exactly what you guys are looking for, and I can prioritize the plan specifically for you. So if I show you a way that we're going to get you the money you need for your home in Charlotte, you'll get there in time to not have to worry about temporary housing, and your communication is going to be above par, so it's not stressful. Is there any reason that we shouldn't go ahead and get all the paperwork signed? And that's how you start checking for the commitment, right? Are you ready to put me to work? There's a couple examples on there. Don't be afraid to go at that point, because again, you want to check for that, because I'm fine if the only thing left is price. I still want to know if they're looking to, because at this point, if you've done a good job at this point, with few exceptions, they'll commit to working with you. Everyone knowing that they still have to agree on price, right? And then we go into, okay, let's talk about, I will then at this point move into, okay, let's talk about pricing, right? So based on, and that's a whole another CMA class, and we'll go through there. So then we go through pricing, and okay, based on what we've talked about, where you want your homes, and then handle objections. Objections are a good thing. What are some of the objections that you're normally getting right now?
Using an agent they used before.
Okay, so that's one could be. So you've gone out there, you've gone through everything. They say, well, we're still talking about using, an agent that we worked with before. Like, okay, great. So let me ask you, is that agent gone through with you and created a plan to help you make sure that you get the home that the money for your down payment, your home in Charlotte, and you get there? Have they gone through that process with you? And then start asking for questions to them. Okay, is there any reason that you would prefer to work with them over me, that if I didn't cover anything here? Because one of the things that I'll find, if it's any agent, I'll use the script. I'll say, okay, awesome. So here's what I'd love to do. I've been doing this for a while, and I'm with a company that I feel is the best company for agents to support their clients. I have had a track record that truly, and I'm not trying to sound like braggadocious, I have a track record that is really, really good for sellers. So this is the process that I've always used. Is there anything that I haven't covered in this that maybe another agent has talked about that you may have specific questions on? Because I want to make sure that, because if they're doing something that's going to help, we're probably doing it as well. I just probably didn't cover it on you. So what are some specific things that you feel that agent would be doing? And then getting into the questions for them. What else? So with them, and we can, anytime you have objections, you can ask me about it. But I do love on page 67, the 4-step response. So first, be glad you're hearing it, because if they're giving you an objection, that means they're considering working with you, right? Beginning with your response with yes. Yes, and I understand your concern. Yes, and I'm glad you asked about that. Do you charge, are you really going to charge 6%? Is that absolutely what you charge? Yes, and I'm glad that you asked that, and let me explain to you why, right? And then you've just demonstrated the value. So now that we've gone over that and kind of cleared that up, is there any reason that we shouldn't be working together? And then also go back to where you found the objections, or that you've covered the objections before. Well, I know that we have talked about this, but we really want to get 375 for the house. Okay. So let me talk about that, because I want to go back and revisit. And again, the reason I take these notes is I want to make sure that our goals are aligned. And one of the most important things that you said is that you wanted to get to Charlotte by August 15th, so you didn't have to go into temporary housing. My concern with 375 is based on the stats for here, we're not going to hit that deadline. So if we don't hit that deadline, are you okay with that? And if the answer is yes, then you go and say, okay, then we need to reprioritize, right? But always go back to, and then ask for the close. So if we do agree, if we get past this part and we agree that actually, it should be 370 versus 375, is there any reason we shouldn't be moving forward? Okay. Set expectations, negotiate and resolve issues, close. So setting expectations. The big thing on setting expectations is communication. The thing that you're going to find is, big one is going to be on communication. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you're going to hear from us once a week. You're going to hear from us on Thursday morning. It's going to give you an update, whatever day you may have. That's going to give you an update of what's come on the market, what's gone under contract, our showings, how it's related to everybody else, and it's just a full update on everything. You'll always hear from us on Tuesdays or whatever day it is that you use. However, of course, if you need us we're open communication. Feel free to call me at any time. Do know that I do, in the morning time, I do spend time looking for buyers for our listings as well as for other properties to put on the market. So anytime you get my voicemail, leave me a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Just set those expectations ahead of time. Because if you don't, the first time they call you and they don't get a hold of you, then they're pissed. And you don't want that to happen. Negotiate and resolve issues through the needs analysis. We talked about that, like any issues that they have. I do go through, after I've gotten commitment, I go through and say, okay, let's talk about some things that we need to do with the house. I'm going to send you a list of things that I've taken from our notes here. So you can, I'll give you my best case scenario list on things that need to be done. And then you get back to me and say whether or not you can do them all. And if so, how long that takes. And then we can kind of adjust at that point of if we need to go on the market any later than what we've agreed or any sooner than what we've agreed. And then basically the follow-up. You close on that, you get the follow-up, and you start assessing and marketing, which is the next part. Questions? Was this helpful?
Yes.
Yes, I thought it was.
Yes.
Great. So what are some ahas that you had, and what more can we cover? So I know I want to keep to the 2-hour part, but give me 3 ahas before we jump off.
This may sound silly, but your pre-listing packet is not much different than what you take with you to the home.
Right.
And I have had such a hang up over that. So maybe I'll get one done.
Right. Oh, I thought I had it. It's not the one in here, but the one I bring is in a 3-ring binder like this, and it's the pages are actually inside of plastic sheets. Oh, I'm sorry. So this is a different one, but it's in a 3-ring, and the pages are inside plastic sheets, so I can write on them with a dry erase and then use it. So I'm not printing out a new one every time.
Gotcha.
And then I can just point to it. I'm not saying that that's the best. I mean, I know some people, particularly on luxury, you know, they're going to print out a new one every time, which is fine. Efficiency. That's a good one though. What else?
To always remind myself to go 3 deep
Mm.
on questions and conversations. I think that's really important.
Yeah. And it'll be, if you don't normally do that, it'll be awkward the first couple of times.
Yeah.
Because it seems like, and some people will react. Like some people that don't, it's like Lynn would put, people who aren't in relationships that ask a lot of questions, this may be weird for them, right? So someone comes in and says, well, we want the top dollar for our house. And it's like, well, let me ask you what's important to you about that. And some people are like, well, because we want the most money for our house. Like, okay, well,
Right.
great. And so, but yeah, you got to remind yourself to go 3 deep. Okay, one more.
Yeah, I too like that a lot. The 3 deep and just reminding yourself to continue to do that. And then again, as I'm learning, is the importance of those scripts. And you've heard me talk about that before. I had never done it. I you know, 4 years in, and I'm just now starting to do it, and it's already given me much more confidence. And then I guess my biggest takeaway through all of this is, you know, being able to have that pre-listing interview sheet, and the guide is also like a cheat sheet when you're meeting with them, and it takes some of that fear away because you basically have notes.
Yep. John Drea just asked if I could send out. I'll email you guys the pre-listing as well as the pre-listing interview as well as the pre-listing packet. Full disclosure: the pre-listing packet I have now to send you is a little dated, so you should probably look at downloading the newest one from KW Connect. It actually looks a lot nicer now. There's a little bit of it's a little clunky in that they've got placeholder pages, which is kind of annoying. But I get it. So you just need to go through and just pull some stuff out. But again, do it and then save it and just always use that one. I mean, the only thing customizable on our pre-listing packet is the cover page, right? So you just should always have, like, if you go look and see, I know we're getting to the weeds, but this is not my gift zone, so this is why I always show people, but you should be able to, this is in Dropbox, so this is going to be a little bit dated. So we have our Saltmarsh properties. We have the sellers. Are you guys looking at this Dropbox page? Okay, sellers, and then I have active listing packet, pre-listing packet. So under pre-listing packet, I have in there basically my pre-listing interview and my pre-listing mailer, right? It's got an auto save. This is why we don't use Dropbox anymore. So, I mean, it's all in the same place. Because I was that guy, I probably created 1,000 pre-listing packages because I never remember where I saved them. And I'll go back in and I'll like download the same one over and over. It's brain damage. So just have, do it once and then have it, because then when you go in, like for instance, the pre-listing mailer, when you open it up, the only thing I have to change is the cover page, which is not going to let me do right now. All right. Anything else? Awesome. I will get these things emailed to you guys now. And if you need anything, let me know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It was fun. You'll have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Bye.